Welcome everyone to Color Commentary. We are your popper commentators, Michael Petchick and Adrian Gonzalez. How's it going, Adrian?
I'm really sore. I just got back from my bar class, and that's a workout for those of you who don't know it. It's a ballet inspired aerobics. It's very hard.
Ballet inspired aerobics. How does
dude,
that
I do it
become
every
a bar?
Well, BARRE. It's like the ballet bar.
Okay.
Because you do a lot of exercises. It's if you guys have a bar class in your area, try it out. It's a great workout and it's extremely difficult. I go with a bunch of friends from work, so it's fun, but it's very difficult, and I'm always very sore for like the whole. I'm basically sore until the following Tuesday, and then I have the class on Wednesday.
So basically, what you're saying is that exercise is ritual self-flagellation, and we should all die fat.
Yes.
All right.
Anyway,
so
upkeep.
So first off, we've got to talk about one of the people who helps bring this show to you every week, and that would be Original Magic Art. They have all sorts of cool art prints and playmats and dice bags, but right now they are running a Kickstarter, good old Kickstarter, which is not, you know what it is. Like, you've been on the internet and you're not my grandparents. Like, you get what this is. But what they're doing is they're having a Kickstarter for this project, Relics of Wizardry, and there are these little counters for assorted things in Magic. And the first wave of them was inspired by Amonkhet, and so they have these counters that are in little cartouche shapes, and they've got one for Embalmed, one for Eternal, one for Exerted. They have a flip one that is +1/+1 on one side and -1/-1 on the other side. And then rounding it out, they have one Ixalan one, and that is a treasure token that is, it looks like it's based off, you know, the Mesoamerican sunstones with all those intricate patterns, circular patterns. But that's for your treasure needs. Perhaps we were going to talk about a deck today that you might have use for these if you play in paper. But this is a super cool product. We got testers of them, and honestly, really, really solid, really well made. Go support them. But if that sort of stuff isn't up your up your alley, and you kind of want to get like a playmat with some classic Magic art on it, or a playmat with, I don't know, like Van Gogh painting on it, you can check out their website. And we have a affiliate code there. If you use the code Commontary, all caps and spelled like it is in our name, when you're checking out, you're going to get 5% off your order, and we're going to get a little kickback. So you're helping keep the lights on over here at Color Commentary. You're getting a sweet deal on some interesting Magic accessories. And to top it all off, well, that's really it. We appreciate it. It helps us keep doing this. And Josh is a really cool guy. We had him on the show a couple weeks ago, and he's always coming out with new and creative products to enhance your Magic experience. So definitely check out the Kickstarter. Definitely check out the website. Don't forget that coupon code. You can save 5% of your order for literally no cost to you. So, all right, Adrian, what do you got for us?
Well, what if I told you could just give me money directly? Would you do it? Well, if you don't know, now's a chance to find out. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/color commentary. You can donate to us, help keep the show running. We got different cool tiers. Yeah, check it out. It's good stuff. And you get the access to the episodes early. Sorry, I actually do a really terrible job of explaining the perks you get. I'm in it for me. I'm very mercenary.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, obviously, show keeps coming to you whether people pay us or not. We do this because we enjoy it. But if you do think that what we do is, you know, worth a monetary reward, go ahead. It does help us out, and it does justify the time that we spend, you know, putting the podcast together, editing it, all that good stuff. But
I didn't ask for your life story, Mike.
That's also fair. But yeah, Patreon's never going to be necessary, but we do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
So this week we're kind of, you know, living up to the color commentary, the non-color commentary name in that we're running back some stats from the past week from the most recent challenge, the most recent Pauper challenge. And we've got all the standings here. We're most concerned with the top 8, specifically because there's a deck in there that we're going to talk about. So we're switching up the format a little bit. You're going to get some information first, and then we're going to do a deck tech. So
I like it.
Let's get into this. So first and second, both of them, both Boros Monarch.
Yeah, and I can't win it with at FNM to save my life. But yeah, we got 2 Boros Monarch lists. Sin's Enlistment seems to be the the card everyone's playing. Both these decks are playing Sin's Enlistment. Great tech piece in my opinion. Like I told Mike before the show, sometimes you in games you lose a game and you have 5 lands in your hand. What good are they doing to you? Nothing.
Yeah, and I'm looking at these lists and like we're getting close to a point of like zeroing in on that close to perfect 75 because I'm looking at these and the main decks and even the sideboards are surprisingly close. Like we're talking like maybe 5-10 cards different.
I also want to talk about that there's this person playing Boros Monarch a lot lately and doing very well named Odorous Urungus. That is not me. I would love to meet this person, fellow Guar fan, fellow Pauper fan, fellow Boros fan. It sounds a lot like me, but it is Odorous Urungus is not me. But mad props to that person.
The first time I saw their names and the results, I was like, this has to be Adrian. Like there's no one else out there. I refuse to believe that there's just someone who happens to share these exact specific interests. But lo and behold, but this is still, a very good deck, right? Like even though you haven't been having the success that you might like on a local level, I think that this is one of those sorts of decks that does very well in these large scale events.
I think I would be doing much better if I played on Moto more. I have not really been playing on Magic Online very much lately.
Yeah, like I don't imagine it's quite like, Stompy sometimes doesn't line up well against certain like rogue decks, fringe decks, brews, whereas I feel like to a lesser extent that could be true as well with Boros. Would you say that's correct? That it doesn't have like
well, you have a lot of good removal, right?
Yeah.
Like the problem with Boros is your creatures are terrible, but you have a lot of good removal, and you have the Monarch thing going for you. So
yeah, it attacks along enough axes. Like you have game in the air, you have a way to outdraw creatureless control style strategies, and you've got good removal for aggro. So like, I think this is just the quintessential mid range deck now for the format.
Yeah, dude, and it is a solid deck. Pick it up, play it. I'm finding at my local level, like you said, it's just not as strong as what I think I need in order to beat some of the other decks. And I think people have finally really figured out my playing style with it. So I'm going to probably move off of it, but it's still a very potent strategy, especially if you're on Magic Online.
Yeah, definitely. Next up in third, there was a Stompy list, and it doesn't seem like much of a thing to bring up, but I just wanted to bring up one thing in particular. Like this is mostly pretty stock. There's one thing in the main deck, and there's one thing in the board that caught my eye. In the main deck, despite running only 16 lands, there are 4 copies, of a 3-drop aura Elephant Guide. And for those unfamiliar, Elephant Guide is 2 and a green for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, and when it dies, you get a 3/3 green elephant creature token.
What do you think this is coming in for? It's not like the deck has issues with. I guess it must be against stuff like Bolt and Galvanic Blast because it already like this doesn't fix the issue of Standard Bearer. The deck is already very good against black removal, so I can only think that it's there for burn or maybe just for trading up your creatures. Like maybe it's really good in the mirror.
I think the idea here is like a 5/5 is probably 5/5 gives you a bit more game against something like Affinity, which sometimes can just crap out 4/4s quickly enough to kind of stonewall you. Um, I'm I'm a little suspect about a 16 land deck hitting 3 lands on a routine basis, and technically, Quirion Ranger is kind of a land in a way. Like you can do your cute little trick of, I've got 2 lands, I tap them both for mana, I bounce one back to my hand and replay it again if I haven't played a land this turn. But I don't know. I'm having a hard time being sold on, again, a 3 mana enchantment. I guess this is one of the lists also that is running Nest Invader, which does come with an 0/1 body that can be popped for colorless, but I don't know. I think my biggest issue here is like, what removal are people playing that would make the replacement part of this card, like the fact that you get the token afterwards, super attractive? Like,
well, the way I'm thinking about it too is if you put this on, if you make a 5/5, you basically cannot lose anymore to Boros Monarch unless they have I guess I could block, but unless they have Journey, and they only play like 2 of them, right? So it's very powerful against that strategy. And considering how this deck is pretty weak to Boros Monarch overall, maybe that's just a little bit of extra boost it needs in order to really help even up that match.
Okay, that I can definitely see that as a good reason for having that in the main deck. And then I do want to talk in the board. There's 3 copies of Viridian Longbow. And again, so this is a one generic mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player, and then it has equip of 3 generic. And
it's got to be there to beat Moment's Peace.
It can beat Moment's Peace, but it can this is also pretty decent against elves.
Yeah, it is.
My only like big concern here is, outside of like being able to untap your thing with Quirion Ranger, like you're unlikely to be able to do like elves has that trick where it just kind of chains it around a bunch of creatures so you can keep using it. You
will also untap its Nettle Sentinel a whole bunch, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. You can also, if you got Nettle Sentinel, just untap it there. But like, I don't think that this is a deck. I think you need some removal. It does. This also has to be pretty decent against Delver, right? Like just being able to like ping off fairies at instant speed to maybe make Spell Stutter not work. I don't know.
Yeah, we've got some other stuff. I don't know if it comes against there. We have, excuse me, Aerial Volley, but I guess Viridian Longbow would also be pretty good.
Yeah. Again, I'm just a little suspect about 16 land. I mean, obviously this person piloted this to a 3rd place finish, but having 7 cards in your 75 that cost 3 mana off 16 lands, to me seems
tough sell.
Yeah, it just seems like you're upping slightly the chance of losing to your opening hand and losing to the mulligans you're going to have to take, because 16 land is not the sort of deck that you want to be heavily mulliganing with. Like, that gets dodgier and dodgier every card you lose. 4th place was a very, like, almost the platonic ideal in terms of how usual it looks version of Blue Black Alchemy. And this is a deck that, while it has not put up a volume of finishes, has been performing pretty well recently when it shows up. Like, you don't really see it every week, but you sure do see it breaking top 8 when it does. And as I said, like, this deck, like, I'm pretty sure at some point I have run this exact same 75, but it could also just be the fact that all these decks kind of blend together. Like, there's not a whole lot of difference in the alchemy lists.
Hey, I want to skip ahead just a little.
Yeah.
There's another Stompy deck in the top 8. It's the exact same list. It's running the 4 Elephant Guides and the 3 Viridian Longbows in the board.
It's running 1 more land though.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fair. I was like, and 1 less Quirion Ranger. Interesting. So clearly that's an evolution that deck is taking. So I just wanted to point that out because we don't need to cover the same list twice, obviously. We can go back to alchemy list. I also didn't know if there was really that much more we wanted to say about it, though.
No. That's totally fair. I think this alchemy deck, like, I'm willing to bet that I've gotten to at least 70 out of these 75 cards, if not played this exact list at some point. It's just like it's one of those solutions that just works. So, you know, don't fix what ain't broke. Fifth place was a has a spicy include. It's mono blue Delver with Stitch Drake. Stitch Drake is 1 blue for a 3/4. It's an additional cost to cast it, exile a creature card from your graveyard, and it has flying. That's not something you see every day, is it?
No, and it seems fine. Like, it's definitely the most expensive creature in the deck, and it doesn't really do anything. And sure, it has a conditional cost. But let's be real, it's not like this deck is using its graveyard anyway. I mean, I guess there are 2 logic knots, which actually is kind of a nombo. But like, now that I actually think about it,
I've got to imagine
4 snaps.
Like,
this deck's weird.
I've got to imagine like logic knot a lot of the time, like you're not like delving away like 10 things. Like you're delving away like enough things. I have to imagine that the number of times that the 2 copies of Stitch Drake actually taking you off being able to counter something with logic knot is pretty minimal.
Sure. The other thing I really want to talk about in this deck that I think is interesting is the fact that it has 2 Steel Sabotage in the board instead of a Null, which a Null has a little bit more play and that it counters enchantments as well, but this has the added bonus of being able to bounce artifacts. So I wonder if this is a concession to cards like Mirror Enforcer.
I mean, it could be. It could also be the fact that like I'm just scrolling down the page. I don't see a single slippery boggle here. Like,
sure,
I think we've moved away from that just enough, like away from the kind of super linear decks like boggles, and you know, you don't really like are you ever really going to be countering that much against a lot of the other like I guess it is really good to resolve against Stompy if they have like a Rancor or something like that. But I mean a Null versus this. I don't know. I just every time I've played Steel Sabotage, I've been underwhelmed by it. It always like I guess in mono blue it probably feels a little bit better, but like I ran this in a couple of blue black decks in the sideboard and I was never that happy with it because I would almost always rather have some sort of removal spell than this.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Yeah, that one's I'm not quite on board with that. Also, man, Coral Net. That's a hell of a
Coral Net's old school old school blue hate card that the new decks don't play because they have red removal.
Yeah. I think if you're gonna go mono blue though, I do like this. Like Stompy's big right now and Boros Monarch's big right now. Like
yeah, it's good against both those decks.
Yeah, I can't imagine this being like yeah, it's only a 2 of, but like it's going to matter. Like you've got Gush, you got your Ponders and Preordains. Like you can see this a reasonable amount of the time. Moving on, 6th place was the Chittering Rats Flicker deck, the one where you lock your opponent out of ever having a draw step.
Two blue black decks in the top 8. One of them, both of them, kind of like hybrid control decks. I know you don't consider Alchemy to be a true control deck, but I mean, it's as close as we're getting right now, I think.
Let me go off on a little tangent here. And what do you mean by true control there?
Mike, I'm not going to be baited into this with you.
I mean, what I'm trying to get at,
it's a deck with limited stat control.
It's a deck with limited stat control, but as well as that, like there are hands out of that deck that are far more aggressive than anything else, where you're just like keeping up counter magic to protect an early threat versus like waiting until the war of attrition is over and then playing out your threat. I think that's my objection to it being classed just as a control deck, whereas something like the Rat Flicker deck that we're looking at right now is very much, you know, it's trying to keep your opponent from ever establishing a board presence and then doing its own thing to make sure that they continue to be unable to do that. In this case, in the form of never letting them have a real draw step again. That said, this list, like, I'm not seeing anything in here that is super, super spicy. I guess they're playing Zombie Outlander over Galena's Night, or no, not Galena's Night. What is it? Vidalian Zombie, but that literally is the exact same card minus creature typing. So
yeah.
Seventh place, that was that Stompy deck that you brought up.
Let's cover the spicy 8th place deck.
Okay, and this is the one we're doing a deep dive on because we've talked about it. We've been kind of on a run of talking about combo decks. And here we go. Here's
our buddy
finish.
Our buddy 420 Dragon cannot not play familiars. I'm pretty convinced.
Yeah,
and I use the term buddy loosely. We don't really know him that well, but if you're listening, 420 Dragon, good job top 8ing with the deck. We know you're a big familiars person, so cool.
Yeah, so let's get into this list a little bit. So our creature base, we're going to start off with 2 copies of Godpharaoh's Faithful, and this is 1 white for an 0/4. And it has, whenever you cast a blue, black, or red spell, you gain 1 life. Now, we referred to this as a Familiars deck. For people who weren't playing at the time, this is kind of Familiars 2.0. And the original version ran Cloud of Fairies, and it ran Ghostly Flicker, and it ran the Karoo lands, and you could create infinite mana with it and do something. Decks varied in how they actually killed you, but the point was you went infinite and you did something with all that mana. Or sometimes some lists just ran Sage's Row Denizen, which is whenever a creature enters the battlefield, target player mills a card off the top of their library. Like, you could just do that. So it just, as long as you got that flicker loop in place. But these decks are named after the next 2 cards. So there's 2 copies of Nightscape Familiar and 4 copies of Sunscape Familiar. And this is a cycle in Plane Shift. Each one of them makes its 2 allied colors. So, for the black one, it's going to be black and red. And for the white one, it's going to be blue and green. It makes spells of those colors cost 1 less. So both of those hit blue. So the big thing about this deck is you're just going to cast a bunch of blue spells and you're going to accrue value off of it. Now, what's your feeling on Godpharaoh's Faithful here?
I really don't know. It's definitely a speed bump for the early decks, but I feel like your deck should be beating the aggro decks. Am I wrong? Like,
well, I
feel like way more.
I think the thing about it is it gives you something. It gives you a turn 1 play that could potentially brick, like, versus Stompy. Like, unless they can get a Rancor, they're going to have to spend a card to deal with this card.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's a place that they really want to be. I mean, you may, as the Stompy player, just decide, okay, the biggest thing I have that doesn't have 4 power or more is going to just get fogged. And I'm okay with that. But I mean, it serves as a road bump, but also that life gain. I don't think that life gain is something we can ignore. Like, 1 per spell doesn't seem like a lot, but I've got to imagine if you're just like curving, and most of this deck is blue or black, like, I've got to imagine there's a sizable chunk of life that you gain off of this every game.
Sure. Yeah. And then that short. Yeah. All right. I'm not sold, but clearly it's good enough for, a dedicated player like Dragon to put it in the deck. So I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt.
Next up, we got 3 copies of Seagate Oracle, 2 in a blue. Look at the top, 1/3 creature. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. 1 goes to hand, 1 to the bottom of the library. Now it's playing this in lieu of Augur of Bolas, and I think that this is a deck that still wants to be able to hit things that aren't spells. That and the fact there's only 18 spells.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I think, especially with the cost reduction, I think that Seagate is a much better card in this deck. You're also a creature-based combo, so it's not even like the Augur will help you find all your combo pieces.
Exactly. Next, we've got 3 copies of Mnemonic Wall, 4 and a blue for an 0/4. When it enters the battlefield, return an instant resource from your graveyard to your hand. This is part of the infinite loop. This with Ghostly Flicker, of which there are 3 copies. Ghostly Flicker lets you choose 2 artifacts, creatures, or lands that you control, exile them, return them to the battlefield, and this lets you pick Mnemonic Wall and something else and just get infinite ETB triggers off them as long as you can keep producing mana. Now, one of the often used targets in decks like this is Muldrifter, which is that wonderful flying fish that we all know and love that draws us 2 cards.
I love that flying fish.
Yeah. We all have a soft spot for Muldrifter. It's, you know, just good. Now the big thing that made this deck kind of a little bit more real and is what I think is largely responsible for the fact that it's been doing much better recently is Prosperous Pirates. Prosperous Pirates is 4 and a blue for a 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2 tokens that are functionally Lotus Petals. And so if you have 1 familiar, a Mnemonic Wall, a Ghostly Flicker, and a Prosperous Pirates, you can get infinite enter the battlefield triggers. Like you can flicker stuff infinitely. Also, it means that if you've got Godfarer's Faithful, you gain as much life as you want. But if you get 2 familiars, you go infinite on mana. So lots of goofy things can go on here. And rounding out the creature suite is a copy of Dinrova Horror for 4 blue and a black. You get a 4/4, and when it enters the battlefield, it return target permanent to its owner's hand. That player discards a card. So this creature base, likes, dislikes, thoughts. What do you got?
I think it is interesting that a deck that is primarily blue and black is running 4 Sunscape familiars and only 2 Nightscape familiars. And I wonder if that's because of the extra toughness on the Sunscape.
I mean, so if Sunscape was an 0/4, I would feel differently, but it is an 0/3. Like, how much removal are you really escaping on that versus having something that can regenerate?
The creature numbers feel a little random to me. 2 Godfarer's Faithful, only 1 Dinrova Horror. What if it gets countered in exile? How do you win?
I mean, so Dinrova Horror, like, certainly once you get the flicker going on, does represent your opponent never having a board again. Like, you only need 1 familiar, that, a Mnemonic Wall, and a flicker, and your opponent just can't ever keep anything on the board. So,
right, and I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if obviously I don't know what I would change, but the numbers on these creatures do feel a little. Maybe they just need to be tweaked a little bit more.
I kind of feel like I almost would prefer more Nightscape familiars just because that regenerate clause is not just flavor text, I feel. In terms of, I guess with Stompy running around with Viridian Longbow in the board, giving them more, like, if they have access to the Longbow, that regeneration clause quickly can become a huge tax on your resources. But I don't know. I guess I'd be curious to hear an argument as to why that split occurred. The rest of this tracks to me. Like, I might go up on the Prosperous Pirates and maybe down like a Muldrifter or something, but I mean, I guess without the rest of the combo, Prosperous Pirates is not huge game, so I don't mind.
Yeah, it doesn't untap. It doesn't untap all your lands, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, it is also a 3/4. Like, the thing is, if you like flicker the horror and like make sure your opponent has no board, like, yeah, you're chipping in for 3 and 4, but like that's better than chipping in for 2 with Muldrifters, so, or 2 with Drakes. Like, I think that, oh wow, I just realized that we avoided a future where Drake got to play Dinrova Horror. That's absolutely a terrifying thing to think of.
Seems good.
Yeah,
Drake did not need to remove a horror though.
didn't need it, but I would have made it feel even worse. Moving on to the spells. So we've got 4 copies of Preordain and then 2 copies of Brainstorm. I'm looking here. I see 7 ways to shuffle the deck.
I think 2 Brainstorm is fine.
You think 2 Brainstorm is fine?
I think 2 Brainstorm is fine.
Man, so Brainstorm lets you really dig for stuff. I don't know if I'm in love with it here over, say, like Impulse.
Sure. Impulse will let you see more cards and doesn't have you can take the best one and then put the rest back. Brainstorm is good if your hand is bad already.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there's something to be said for like being able to basically use it as like a partial mulligan in the early game. But again, I haven't had a chance to sit down with this and actually play it, but I'm not wholly convinced that I like Brainstorm in that 1-drop slot. And I'm willing to admit I could be wrong on this, but I think I might even prefer playing Ponder over this personally. But also Preordain with that many, like you run into that issue of like Preordain is putting stuff to the bottom, Brainstorm's putting stuff to the top. Like if you've bottomed stuff with Preordain, do you really want to be shuffling away on your Brainstorm and then possibly running into those cards that aren't relevant right now again?
I don't know. Andrea Mangucci does it all the time, so I'm starting to think there might be something more to that than what you learned in school.
Andrea Mangucci also plays Legacy though, which is
sure
dramatically different than what we've got here. Next up, we got 4 Snap. The only surviving untapped lands blue card, I believe, right? We don't have any others in the format.
I don't think so. No.
I mean, if we can get Great Whale downshifted and Palancron, we can go for the complete victory here of having none of them legal in Pauper. But Snap is 1 in a blue, return target creature to its owner's hand, untap 2 lands. And this can be mana positive if you've got enough of the Karus in play.
Yes.
Yeah. Next, we got 4 copies of Compulsive Research, 3 in a blue, draw 3, then discard either a land or 2 cards.
And this must be the combo finish, right? Because you can target your opponent, and I don't see another way of winning the game on the spot.
I mean, would you not count like Flickering Dinrova Horror infinitely as winning on the spot, even if you do have to technically click through another couple turns?
That's just good. I mean, I guess so. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. That's probably a pretty good win con too. I'm just saying this actually wins you the game right then and there.
I mean, yeah. If you go through the hoops for it and you got a pair of walls and you can get this back and your flicker, like,
how dare you defy me?
Constantly, always. Then we got 3 copies of Ghostly Flicker, as we mentioned before. Can't get away from this. Like, I think 3 is a respectable number to run here. You've got a lot of card draw. You've got a lot of card filtering. I think that's a good place to be at. And then a Singleton Reaping the Graves. For those unaware, Reaping the Graves is 2 in a black for an instant. Return target creature to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and it has Storm. So
one of the few Storm cards left.
And this is a doozy of one. Like, even without trying super hard, this can easily be like get back 3 creatures.
Yeah, you just have to, Preordain, Brainstorm, Reaping the Graves.
You can also just, if your opponent casts 2 spells on their turn, it is instant speed. You can just slam this.
Instant speed Storm. Whose idea was that? Mark Rosewater.
I don't know if Mark Rosewater actually worked on the design team for Scourge. I'm pretty sure he did, but
I don't know either. It's just Storm is a mechanic.
Sure is. That sure is a way to phrase that's non-committal and doesn't use the word broken. But looking at our land base, we got 4 Ash Barrens and 3 Evolving Wilds as our fetches here. Then we've got 3 Azorius Chancery and 3 Dimir Aqueducts as our Karus. Then 5 islands, 1 plains, 1 swamp, and 1 Tranquil Cove. Thoughts on this mana base?
Ash Barrens and Evolving Wilds clearly there for Brainstorm. Also, being able to get the one of plains and the one of swamp is good. I don't really think you need more basics than that. Well, just looking through the deck, because the deck is predominantly blue. So as long as you find them eventually, you're fine.
I guess my thing is like, how much does this deck need to curve out? Because to me, that basic count looks a little high personally. And I get that running all the fetches lets you get maximum value out of your brainstorms. But to me, it almost feels like this deck might be serviced by playing more tap lands over some of these fetches.
You're right. You definitely don't need to be. You definitely don't. What I'm trying to say, you definitely don't need to curve out. I think that the fetches are valuable so that you can find the mana when you need it, and they also happen to go well with Brainstorm. But I can see both arguments here. I think because it's a 3-color deck, it wants to fetch lands a little more.
That's fair. I'm kind of imagining this as like 4 Ash Barrens, no wilds, and instead of the wilds having like 3 gain lands. I'm just seeing that it more as like Ash Barrens is really good fixing when you need it, but also just playing like a mixture of ETB tapped lands just to make it so, I don't know. I guess there is also something to be said for the deck thinning aspect of it. It's not huge. Like, you can go out there, you can read articles about this. Like, deck thinning because of fetching lands is not as big of a thing as some people make it out to be, but it does actually, in the long run, have an effect on the overall average performance of a deck. So I guess I could entertain that as a argument for it, but I don't know. Land base is a little funky to my eyes.
Yeah.
Sideboard. We got a 1 of Dispel. Blue, instant, counter target, instant. Envelop, blue, instant, counter target, sorcery. The last 2 copies of Godfair's Faithful, 2 Hydroblasts, 2 Hoodwink. Hoodwink is a little interesting masks block card that you used to see in the Familiars decks. And all it does is 1 in a blue, return target artifact, enchantment, or land to its owner's hand. So this is it's a boomerang with a less stringent requirement in a lot of cases. I guess it doesn't hit creatures, but you know, it does let you have that gotcha moment if your opponent, like, I don't know, plays Raise against you. But
yeah, I've seen Hoodwink in these lists before. I'm 100% sure what it's really for.
I think the only real thing you can do is protect your lands if someone goes to remove them. Continuing with the sideboard, though, we got an extra copy of Nightscape Familiar, 3 copies of Spellstutter Sprite, 2 copies of Stonehorn Dignitary, which if you can get this involved in a flicker loop, makes your opponent just skip an arbitrary amount of combat phases, and then the 3rd copy of Prosperous Pirates.
Prospy Pyres.
Prospy Peas.
Prospy Peas.
Prospies.
Cold Prospy Peas. Prospies is what we call prospective students in college. I think that's a normal thing, though. I don't think that's just a Southwestern thing.
I don't know. The last time I was in college was like 4 years ago, so I may not be the correct person to speak on that particular subject. But okay, so we've looked at this whole deck. Why is it successful, and is this going to be here to stay, or is this going to kind of be another one of these fringe combo decks that sees some success at a challenge level and then kind of goes away for a little bit?
I'm inclined towards the latter. The deck's best showing is this top 8, I think, recently, and it's in the hands of someone who pretty much exclusively plays this style of deck. I don't think it's going to overtake the format. Do I think it has legs? Yeah, I think it has legs. I think I think that this style of deck is always going to be powerful. I just wonder if it is the best infinite combo in the format right now, and I'm not sure it is.
Do you want to make a claim as to what you think might be? Because the only thing I can think of that I can think of that seems to have had repeat success on a real level is Ralligond.
Ralligond and that's with multiple people have done well with Ralligond.
Yes. I guess with me, like looking at this list, while I have quibbles with it, like I'm starting to see why this could be successful.
And don't get me wrong, I think that this list looks a lot stronger than Ralligond, but you know the results are what they are. So
I guess my thing is comparing this to Ralligond. Ralligond also had the backup plan of like just playing a token deck that had Rally the Peasants in it, whereas this, you know, like your only other backup outside of the combo is like chipping in with tutus in the air. Like you're playing 7 creatures with Defender and 9 if you want to count Godpharaoh's Faithful with the lack of actual power on that thing. I don't know. It seems strong, but it seems beatable, I guess, is where I want to head with this.
Is combo finally in the spot we've wanted it to be all along then?
It might be. Like like looking at this list, I can see like paths to victory, but it also doesn't seem like I could probably take any 7 cards that has lands to cast my spells and I'm good. Like this seems like there are going to be times where things just don't line up correctly for you and it just like, you know, doesn't come together. And I also think like, you know, this deck probably like, because it's not playing big creatures or anything, this deck probably doesn't have a great time against graveyard hate. And I think I'm okay with this. Like as much as this is going to sound like super condescending, this is a super okay combo deck, but I think that's a really good thing. Like the fact
I don't think that's condescending. I think that you're spot on.
Like looking at this, I'm not immediately like, oh God, this is super broken. Like the only thing I can think of when I look at this is like, that's a respectable way to get to a combo finish. Like it requires a lot of moving parts and, you know, sure, it's got a lot of ways to filter your cards and it's got a lot of raw card draw, but
it doesn't seem bad, right? Like sure, there are lots of moving parts combos, but this one doesn't actively seem awful. It seems good.
This isn't, you know, like what is it, Blessing of Leeches combo. Like I don't know if you've seen that particular specimen.
I feel like you've shown it to me before, and I promptly forgot like a good Christian.
It's this goofy combo that like uses this enchantment that lets you regenerate a creature for 0, and you put like, I think it's Guilty Conscience and Spiteful Shadows on something your opponent controls.
Yeah, so I know this deck.
Yeah, when it takes damage, like it deals that damage to its controller, and then it gets dealt that damage by one of the other enchantments, and you keep regenerating it, so it creates this loop, and your opponent dies.
Mike, you're hurting my head.
I know it's bad, but this is not that deck. This deck looks like it does actually have legs. And I'm going to be watching this closely as it goes. I really wish you could shave a color out of this, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think at 2 colors, it would be much better. And I wonder if you can just YOLO on 4 Nightscape Familiars. That's probably too few, though. That probably makes you too soft to losing them.
Yeah. Now, okay. Let's say you lose all the familiars. Like your opponent just happens to have their removal line up pretty well with your familiars. Is this deck like Flickering Prosperous Pirates, even without the cost discount? Like you could still like it still makes it so it's just 1 mana to flicker them.
Effectively, yeah, because you're using the lotus petals. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like I'm kind of thinking like what if you ran something like Sage's Row Denizen? Like, would it be slow and grindy? Sure, but like I guess like even just like flickering like wall and horror is probably fine in a lot of games. Like I almost don't think that this combo needs to go infinite run if it runs well.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like I think obviously like the optimal thing is going like turn one fair God Fair is faithful, turn two familiar, turn three familiar, then like turn four wall and turn five horror and then start flickering like or turn five prosperous pirates. I don't know, like I feel like the inclusion of the familiars just lets this have those hands where it just goes off and can't really be stopped that easily. But I'm not sure that they're like I feel like if your opponent's removal lines up well against it, you're not just dead in the water if you lose those familiars.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that.
And I think here the reason that there's 6 is mainly just so you have a better chance of drawing them in your opener. Like I don't think it's so that like your opponent's going to attrition you out most of the time. I think it's just there so you're going to have a higher chance of seeing one in your opener and you can have that sort of nice curve out into your combo quickly. So, I don't know. I for once in my life and just watch us cuz we said the same thing about Drake and that was not fine, but I think that this one I think we finally found that spot where it's not easily abusable anymore.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
This is fine. Little dog burning up. This is fine.
Yeah, yeah. This is fine. That is eternally like there's a new combo deck in Pauper, and it's just like, yeah, we are all in this moment, the dog going, this is fine. And hopefully this time we're right. Um all right, so we've talked a lot about this particular batch of results, and you know, I've been as we're talking here, kind of lazily scrolling through some of the other lists. And I did want to briefly touch upon is Burn more of a threat now?
I think people will always play burn. I don't know if it's more of a threat than it used to be. I think there's always going to be a lot of burn decks because it's cheap.
Well, I think also Burn is no longer like dirt cheap. It's still very cheap, but it's not dirt cheap. That said, swapping so Firebrand Archer and Thermo Alchemist versus Keldon Marauders, where Keldon Marauders you could get away with chumping it because it was just going to die the next turn anyway. And like when Keldon Marauders was one of the only things that deck ran, I think a lot of people felt very comfortable siding out removal. And I think that now, with the way Burn is being built, it's a little bit dodgier to take out all of your removal. Like obviously a deck like Boros Monarch can leave its removal in because it can all go face anyway. But we've talked fairly frequently, since the advent of Modern Masters 2017 about the fact that black removal is not as good as it used to be. And do you think this is even making that worse just because like, if your opponent gets Firebrand Archer and Thermal Alchemist online pretty quickly, like you're likely just going to get ranched there. Like,
Yeah, the decks are very fast. And they have the black decks don't have a really good way that are interacting with them, is what I was following up with.
Yeah, outside of like keeping removal in, which some of the draws that's just dead against. So I guess I'm saying that it might seem minor, but I think that Burn is disrupting black decks on a very, very, very specific axis in a way that other decks might not be disrupted.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Just something I noticed. Outside of that, though, we're seeing a lot of the standard stuff, and we've said it before. Like, I don't think that the format's in a bad place. It's kind of weird. Like, we don't have anything to complain about anymore. This podcast was built.
Oh, you're a Magic player. You'll think of something.
The fact that I don't have Explorers of Ixalan. Actually, before we go to the outro, I do want to talk about that. Did you see the preview for Explorers of Ixalan?
No. Tell me about it.
It's
wow me.
It's kind of like Catan the Gathering. Like, that's kind of what it looks like. It's some weird, funky, like, multiplayer variant that has a board that looks surprisingly similar to Catan.
Wait, start from the beginning. I thought this was the next set, but you're talking about something totally different. What is this you're talking about? The next set
is Rivals of Ixalan. Explorers of Ixalan is like a multiplayer, like, arch enemy style sort of product.
I have not seen this.
It looks surprisingly like a Settlers of Catan board, and it kind of looks interesting. Like, I am not a huge fan of like wacky multiplayer formats outside of like EDH, which I do enjoy, but like I will hard pass on like Plane Chase EDH, but this kind of looks neat. Like, it's got like this board made out of hex tiles, and it's like an island, so hence why it looks a little bit like Catan, but I'm interested. I don't know. Wizards has managed to pique my interest, and I usually do not buy sealed product, so good on you. All right. So, do you want to take us out of the show? It's getting close to an hour here.
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you with the support of our patrons. Consider supporting us if you like the show. Check below this video or the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you that if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever, they're always appreciated because they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or an idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. A special thanks to Pat's Games and the one, the only L. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.